a 5-fight win streak dating back to 2021, an 8-fight win streak dating back to September 2020. One of these win streaks will come to an end this Saturday night in the main event of UFC Vegas 99, where we will have the 13th ranked middleweight in the world, Anthony "Fluffy" Hernandez, taking on the 14th ranked Michel Pereira. Typically, I would be an advocate for a fighter such as Anthony Hernandez or Michel Pereira to get an older veteran that's kind of been there and done that in their first main event slot in the UFC. However, that's not the case here. We are instead seeing them pitted against one another, 13 versus 14, both of which have just recently, as of this year, cracked into the rankings. And instead of fighting up a little bit further against someone who's been in the division a little bit longer, they will go up against one another to keep chasing top 10 status and join the elite of the elite in the 185-pound weight division. For Fluffy Hernandez, the 5-fight win streak dates back to February of 2021, which started with a submission win over Rodolfo Vieira, and that is one that is still very fresh of mind to this day because he was getting beat down in that fight, but came back on the brink of defeat and got a finish in the second round. And of that 5-fight win streak that he's on, 4 of them have been by stoppage, and 3 of those 4 by submission. The lone decision was against Josh Fremd in April of 2022, and the last loss for Hernandez was in May of 2020 against Kevin Holland. The 2018 Season 2, Episode 2 alum of Dana White's Contender Series, Anthony "Fluffy" Hernandez, has finished overall 10 of his 12 victories, been finished in both of his career losses. At 30 years old, he's entering his prime with a kill or be killed mindset every single time that we see him step in the cage. Now he will get to have his biggest test to date against someone who has not lost in a very, very long time. Oh, Michel Pereira. Once known as the guy that would come into the cage and just do cartwheels and flips, gas his tank out, lose 2 fights in a row, has now since tallied off 8 straight victories. First it started at 170 pounds, and now it has continued on in the 185-pound division. And of those 8 wins, 4 of them have been by way of stoppage, including his last 3 over Ihor Potieria, Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, and Andre Petroski. Oh, and by the way, all 3 of them combined for, 2 minutes and 7 seconds plus 54 seconds, 3 minutes and 11 seconds? No, 3 minutes and 3 seconds? Something like that is his combined fight time over the past 3 fights dating back to October of 2023. And even if you go outside of the 3-fight specific finish streak that he's on, he has wins over Santiago Ponzinibbio, Andre Fialho, Nico Price, Chaos Williams. You could say that if you compare the resumes of each win streak, the side that has faced the more veteran expertise, faced the bigger names, is definitely Michel Pereira. Now that I think about it though, I guess I do kind of have to give a little bit more shine to that resume of Fluffy Hernandez. Now that you really do look into it here, that fight against Roman Kopylov at UFC 298 in 2024, that was a battle of 2 guys that were on very big win streaks, similar to this main event slot here. Prior to that, Edmund Shabazian, that loss doesn't look as good as maybe it would have at one point, and Marc-Andre Barrio is obviously a very long-time veteran of the UFC, so the win streak obviously is solid still for Hernandez, but I think just overall, Pereira takes the cake by a smidge. We saw Michel Pereira debut back in May of 2019 and get a flying knee knockout in 1 minute and 47 seconds against Danny Roberts, and immediately it felt like a rocket was going to be strapped to his back if he kept up performances like this, paired with his crazy, wacky, fun entrances and what he would do inside of the cage. But we quickly saw that catch up to him with back-to-back losses over Tristan Connolly and Diego Sanchez. Now, the Diego Sanchez one was due to an illegal knee in a fight that Michel was winning, but a loss is a loss. But ever since then, fight by fight, while still having a little bit of pizzazz and quirkiness to the way that he goes to the cage and fights in the cage, he really has tightened up the holes in his game. He's bettered his gas tank, and more importantly, he's better managed the gas in his tank. But those have all been over the course of 3 rounds. Can he do it for a potential 5? As I've already stated, if you go back to the fight that Fluffy Hernandez had with Rodolfo Vieira that started his win streak, you know that he will not quit and he will not get tired. You have to put him to sleep, put him away in order to get a victory. And Michel Pereira does have that finishing prowess. Now, doesn't quite finish at as high of a clip, but look at the amount of experience that he has compared to Hernandez. Michel Pereira has more than double the amount of wins that Anthony Hernandez has total fights. Fluffy Hernandez has 15 fights in total. Michel Pereira has 31 victories, 11 defeats, and 2 no contests. Of those 11 losses, only been finished 2 times. So someone that has such a high finishing rate of Anthony Hernandez, can he finish someone who has yet to be finished in the UFC? I'm really looking forward to this fight. I think it's 2 very well-rounded mixed martial artists that have a lot to offer in this 185-pound division that is really starting to churn at the top with the title defense that Dricus just had, with the main events of Caio Bahaio versus Jared Cannonier, Nasruddin Imavov just beat Brendan Allen, Rob Whittaker versus Hamzat. The division is really going right now, and now that you have all that movement in the top 8, top 5, you have the movement in the top 15 back half as well. I'm very happy seeing both of these guys get that main event slot. It is interesting that it will come against one another. It sucks that one of them have to end the other's losing streak rather than having that tested against an old season veteran, but I digress. I think this fight kind of checks all the boxes for me. Grappling, striking, cardio, testing each other in terms of who can go a potential 25 minutes. That's something that a lot of prospects kind of get faltered with in their first big jump up. We've seen it even with Benoit Saint Denis versus Dustin Poirier, for example. So how will it fare here when 2 prospects square off with one another, have to test one another? That is the question we will get on Saturday. Or the answer, I guess I should say. So give me your predictions for this UFC Vegas 99 main event in the comments below. Will it be Anthony Fluffy Hernandez extending his win streak to 6? Or will it be Michel Pereira extending his win streak to 9, just one shy of double digits, has quietly built one of the longest win streaks in middleweight division's history and in just the modern UFC as of right now in this current roster, one of the longest of all 700 plus fighters. And now that we are done discussing the UFC Vegas 99 main event, we will jump into the rest of the card, talk about some of the fights that could have some very fun potential and a couple that do have pretty important storylines and what is at stake in terms of their division. It starts in the co-main event where we have top 10 ranked Rob Font taking on the number 12 ranked surging Kyler Phillips. This matchup is a tale of 2 completely different career trajectories at this point. For Kyler Phillips, the young prospect that's coming into the top 10, he's won 6 of his 7 fights since debuting in the promotion in February of 2020, including 3 in a row, most recently over Pedro Munoz, in an absolutely just masterful performance back at UFC 299. Whereas for Rob Font, he's lost 4 of his last 5 fights dating back to December of 2021. The only victory was in April of last year when he took on Adrian Yanez and really starched him and kind of put him back a little bit in this division, kind of stopped one young up-and-comer. Can he do it a second time against Kyler Phillips? And to be fair, 4 out of his last 5 have been losses, but look at who they are against. It's Jose Aldo, it's Marlon Chito Vera, it's Corey Sandhagen, and it's Davison Figueiredo. I mean, you're talking a former title challenger, a former flyweight champion turned potential bantamweight title challenger, Marlon Chito Vera, former title challenger, Jose Aldo, former title challenger, and king of the featherweight division for nearly a decade. I mean, come on, we can't really hate on that. The beautiful striking and boxing combinations of Rob Font versus the well-rounded skill set of Kyler Phillips makes for a very, very intriguing bout. Kyler really put on just a clinic, as I've already said. Master class is what I worded it as, against Pedro Munoz. Before that, he got wins over Heuni Barcelos and a finish over Marcelo Rojo. The only loss is a majority decision back in July of 2021. And before that, even had a win over Song Yadong, albeit very close. I remember a very funny moment with my friends when we were watching that fight together. It's a funny story. I'm not going to say it here. You got to ask them. But for Rob Font, 37 years old, kind of on the back half of his career, whereas Kyler Phillips, just 29, entering his prime right now, 12-2 overall. 7 of his 12 victories are by finish. Never been finished before in his 2 losses. Rob Font, not the easiest guy to put away. He's only been finished once out of his 8 losses, and it was via submission. So while I'm not necessarily thinking Kyler's going to come in here and really just run through Rob Font and get a finish, I think there is still potential for Phillips to have another duplicate performance of what he did to Pedro Munoz. And in the flyweight division, I didn't even know this fight was happening until I started to dig in and do the betting odds and research for this card. It's the number 7 ranked flyweight in the world, Matheus Nicolau, taking on the newly ranked number 14, Almabayev. When Matheus Nicolau re-entered the UFC for his second stint back in March of 2021, he tallied off 4 straight victories, all of them against ranked opponents, Manel Kape, Tim Elliott, David Dvorak, and Matt Schnell. That put him in a number 1 contender fight, essentially, 1 win away from a title shot. And what happens? He gets knocked out just 2 minutes into his fight against Brandon Raw Dog Royval, and then has also followed that up with a loss in April against Alex Perez, where he got viciously one-punch knocked out in the second round. But at 31 years old, he's still in his prime, 19-4-1 overall as a professional. I still believe in the skill set of Matheus Nicolau, in the ceiling of him. He's a very well-rounded, methodical, technical mixed martial artist. But Almabayev, he has one skill set that is going to reign supreme over a lot of flyweights. The 30-year-old out of Kazakhstan has really quietly put together a 3-0 record in the UFC thus far. He debuted in August of last year with a finish over Ode Osborne, and then has followed that up with decision victories over CJ Vergara and Jose Johnson. Now 20-2. This kid is a problem, I believe, for the future of this 125-pound division, and I think that should say as much when he's getting matched up against someone in the top 10 in just his 4th UFC fight, someone that's literally been 1 win away from challenging for a belt. 12 finishes out of his 20 victories, and just a relentless grappler who will not get tired and will refuse to quit until he puts you onto the ground and dominates you with his top control, ground and pound, and submission attempts. Of those 12 finishes, 9 of them are by way of submission. If Asu can get Matheus Nicolau in his range, up close, push him against the fence, and get the takedowns, it's something that we've not really had to see Matheus Nicolau handle so far in the UFC. But if Matheus can keep the fight on the feet, can he test Asu more than we have seen thus far through his first 3 UFC fights? Nicolau been in there with the who's who of the division. Asu still kind of untested in a way, 2 very convincing decisions, a second round finish of Ode Osborne. Now he's going up against someone who is a legitimate, top 10, one of the best flyweights in the world. And again, just so well-rounded as Nicolau. Can the one dominant skill set of Asu press him forward? There's another fun flyweight fight on this card between Charles Johnson and Sumudaerji. Brady Hiestand, a Ultimate Fighter alum, is taking on Jake Hadley, a Dana White's Contender Series alum. Darren Elkins and Daniel Pineda. Oh boy, is that going to be violent. So all in all, not the craziest of fight night cards, but I do like the matchups in the flyweight division, number 7, number 14, and I love the co-main event between number 10, Rob Font, and number 12, Kyler Phillips in the bantamweight division. Pair that, or I guess trilogy that, with the main event, number 13 versus number 14, 2 guys that are on a combined 13-fight win streak. Again, it sucks we have to see one of them come to a close, but the next man up is the mindset here. Someone will inch their way closer to the top 10. The other will have their momentum halted. So as I already said, give me your predictions for the main event and give me your predictions and bets for the rest of the card as well. Will Kyler Phillips extend his win streak and hop into the top 10 in the bantamweight division? Will Almabayev continue his unbeaten streak in the UFC? Or will Matheus Nicolau right the ship in his career and everything else in between? If you enjoyed this breakdown, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Every week I break down and preview the biggest storylines and what is at stake for the best fights of every card. I also recap the most meaningful results from every fight night weekend and give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can join the community on social media at Verbal Spar MMA on X, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can follow on your favorite audio listening platforms such as Spotify and Apple, where every Friday and Monday podcast episodes release there. Have a great weekend, enjoy the fights, and I will see you in the next video.